talk this evening is coming out of the fog. I'm covering a lifetime of grief. So in 1980, I was born Marissa Cannon, which is not my name today. I was placed for adoption at birth and spent the first 7 months of my life in foster care before I was placed with my adoptive family. And upon placement, my mom tells the story of how I would just wail. And she would hold me, and she would rock me, and I would wail and wail and wail. And there was nothing she could do, nothing that could be done except to hold me. And as I grew, I always knew that I was adopted. I would be told these amazing, loving things like, we chose you. You were chosen. God had a plan for you. You were placed with us. You're so lucky to have this family, to be where you are. And these things were always well-intentioned. But what it started to do for me was it started to create this fog around me. You see, what happened when I was placed for adoption is I was fractured. My very being, the very core of me was completely fractured. And I was just precariously held back together, not with anything substantial. It was just very, very precariously held together. And this fog that began to develop around me with all of these things that I was told to help me to not feel the pain of having been surrendered, started to create this veil around me. And as I could look in the mirror, and I knew cognitively, like, okay, I wasn't wanted. I was put into this situation. Like, I knew these things logically, these things had happened. But as I looked in the mirror with this veil, this fog around me, I could barely discern that I had been so fractured so young. In fact, I would tell anyone, I'm good, I'm okay. I'm a good adoptee. I'm so thankful I was adopted. I'm so thankful I've had the life that I've had. I was very privileged in a lot of ways. And what happened was I found myself pregnant at 23, not married. Very similar situation as my birth mother, only she was 18 when she was pregnant. This was a generation or two later. A lot of things have changed in society. Having a baby out of wedlock was not so shameful. And so I had my daughter with my now husband. We're married now. But I remember when she was placed on my chest. The feelings that arose out of me were something primal. This feeling that I could not let go of this child, no matter what. And the grief that came over me, starting to understand what that must have felt like for my mother to have had me in her womb and to have held me to her chest and to have surrendered me. This began to wash over me in those early days with my daughter. But as we do, we carry on, right? We have children and we know we have to show up for them. I stuffed those feelings down deep, deep down. I let that fog envelop me again because I had to show up for my daughter as fully as I could. And I poured myself into her. I've had 2 more daughters since, and I have poured myself into them. There were little things along the way that would come up that I recognize now was this unprocessed grief. Part of the reason why I couldn't send my oldest to kindergarten when she turned 5 was I couldn't let go of her still. I still had to keep her right here with me. Now, it's been one of the most empowering things we've done for our family to keep our children home. But I recognize where it came from. The fact that I couldn't return to work after she was born, like, it was paralyzing. And I had no logical sense of it. I just knew that I couldn't do what I had done before. And I was moving along in my life like this, pouring into them, pouring into them, pouring into them, not into myself. And then I moved here to the Bay Area. And shortly after, an email comes through. It's my biological aunt. And she's found me through a website I randomly put my information out on. And she said, I think I know who you are. My sister had a baby 32 years ago, and I think it's you. And I connected with my birth mother. And I know you've probably seen reunion videos of some sort, and it's this magical coming together, but no one talks about what happens after. So we connected, and I got to know her a bit. And I didn't jump in. I was very hesitant because I was scared to step out of this fog. I was really scared. And it took about 3 years for her to have enough money to come out and visit us. And she came for the holidays about 3 years ago. And she shows up in the airport, and I give her a hug, and I'm expecting all of these feelings to come up, this overwhelming love and just seeing myself in her, and none of that happened. This was a stranger. I couldn't see myself in her face. I couldn't see myself in the things she said, and I was lost. She left and went home, and I was standing here completely empty. I didn't know who I was in the context of this person who gave me life. And I continued to pour into my children, trying to bring that fog back around me to just envelop me and keep me safe. And I found myself completely broken. I shut myself so far off from all feeling that I nearly ended up in the hospital needing a blood transfusion. I couldn't even feel my body. And I had this wake-up call when the doctor looked at me with eyes wide, just shocked I wasn't somewhere just completely gone. It was that serious. And it shocked me into this position of, I have to start working on this. I found myself on the ground, completely broken. This very precariously held together individual was shattered on the ground. And I had to sit there and gather the pieces back up. And I had to start one by one, picking up the piece, looking at it, and figuring out where it went. And slowly piecing myself back together. And I started to do a lot of embodiment practices. I joined things that helped bring voice to this pain and this grief that I've been carrying my entire life. And I started to speak up. And one by one, these pieces started to connect and join back together and create who I am again. But I still had no context to who I was. This shape, this form, who I am, had no rooting. When I was placed for adoption, we think about this family tree. My roots were amputated. I didn't make sense in this world, who I was, where I came from. And this August, I had this overwhelming need to travel and visit my mom again and see where I came from, to meet my extended family, to understand how I made sense in this world. And as I met family member after family member after family member, the fog really started to lift. I could see myself clearly. I had roots beginning to jet down into the earth. When I came back, people were like, how was it? And the only thing I could say was, I feel grounded. I make sense. So what I've learned in this, as I've been through this process of grieving, this process of self-discovery, this shattering of self, is I've been pieced back together, and I still show all of these cracks. There's a method in Japan with pottery when it breaks. And they use gold, melted gold, to help forge these pieces back together. And it creates the most beautiful piece of pottery you've ever seen. These shattered pieces with gold, showing the fissure, showing the healing that's been done. That's what I feel like I've done today. So I'm now like this piece of pottery and this gold that's through me. And I can stand here as I am, as this sovereign being, as this person I have mothered back to self for the first time. Coming out of this fog and learning who I am.